There you go. Hello, gentlemen, ladies out there. Solim Wang here, and Tepo Matsiba hosting you at another session of WorldView. These are live sessions that we hold every Monday to discuss key hot topics in South Africa, and we obviously explore everyone's perspective on things that can broaden our own worldview. Today we have with us Manuel De Freitas and Mamechi Ramawela. De Freitas is the Shadow Minister for Tourism in Gauteng for the DA. And Mamechi, she's been in tourism for many years. She was in marketing and communications for Limpopo Tourism. She became the CEO of the Tourism Business Council of South Africa. She continues to be. It's very hard to leave the tourism industry once you're there. There's so much work to be done in it. So she continues to play a role in tourism. And I'm sure she's also been watching, just like Manuel would have been, watching the recent events regarding violence in South Africa, to the extent to which it impedes South Africa's attractiveness as a tourism destination. And of course, with me, I have my colleague Tsepo Matseba. Tsepo, how are you doing, my friend?
Good evening, Soli, and the name is Machachi.
What did I say?
We're discussing tourism, so you can be forgiven.
What did I say? Did I not say Machachi? What did I say?
Tsepo, you've got him. The last time he was saying the same thing. Woo!
But good evening, and thanks, colleagues, for the opportunity.
You can call me Solim Wait, okay? Just to come to get even. Okay. So where do we start? I mean, perhaps you want to throw this out there?
Yeah, so we've observed for the past a couple of weeks at least, just the trends in terms of serious violent crimes in South Africa, and the extent to which those crimes we believe are impacting the tourism sector. But perhaps the colleagues, Manny and Machachi, can tell us a little bit more. And this is on the back of the two significant events that I would like to note. The kidnapping of a Ukrainian citizen, I think in Cape Town, and then in daylight, really, the things that you see here are frightening. It almost looks like a Hollywood movie. Then, of course, the untimely.
Seppo, you're freezing. Is it me or is it Seppo?
Looks like it's Seppo.
Yeah.
Okay, Seppo, while you're frozen, I know that people who freeze suddenly come on while you're trying to replace them. Anyway, guys, thank you to all those guys who've joined us. Moonchild and who else is there? We have people already joining us. And just so you understand, I think our background support has tried to explain that Manny has had a surgery. That's why he's wearing a mask. Nothing to do with COVID-19 or being fearful of Dr. Nkosi Zanatlamini Zuma.
I apologize. I'm sorry about this.
Nothing to do with that. All right. We're discussing tourism, recent events, how they impact on tourism. Do you guys want to comment on recent events? And perhaps maybe let's talk about how government has responded to this, and also how the main tourism bodies in South Africa, specifically the TBCSA, has responded to this. SANSA, I know that has also commented, especially in regard to whether or not Numbit Gate should be closed. What are your views?
Who are you asking?
Both of you. You go first. Yeah, I mean, you go first, and then usually it's ladies first, but you know.
Let many start. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It is very concerning. In fact, at our portfolio committee this morning, they were talking about the incident with a German tourist. And the board of SAT, South African Tourism, did talk about how there have been relatively little incidences in comparison to many other parts of the world. And the point is that even this one incident, you spoke about the kidnapping, the Ukrainian kidnapping, and this German incident, has a huge knock-on effect in tourism in general. And within less than a week, there were a whole lot of cancellations from tourists all over the world. because of this one incident. It was front page news in the German press throughout the whole of Germany. So it has an incredibly negative effect on us. Now, the difference between us and, in fact, many other parts of the world that have more crime against tourists than we do is that they are seen, or are very proactive, and they react very quickly, and they try and resolve the problem. Now,
give us examples. Give us examples of places that have more tourism crime than us.
Well, I mean, this German tourist, I've just submitted questions to the Minister of Police because I'm asking him, what are they doing to beef up the local SAPS station as far as resources and human resources are concerned? Because my information on the ground is that, in fact, there hasn't been any beefing up at all. And this incident happened at the beginning of the month already. And the local police station, from what we're getting, the information, is that they know of nothing, no beefing up of the situation. So that is very concerning because, yes, it may well be one incident or two incidents that happen, but the impact is huge. And the problem with tourism, it has impact on creation of jobs, contributing to our economy and so forth. So the impact is huge. Sorry, I interrupted.
Yeah, that's okay. But Mani, I need to, before Machachi comes in, I want to ask, what do you mean many other places that have more violence against tourism than us? Can you give us a name? I mean, we throw these things out there. Give us a country that has more violence against tourism than South Africa.
For example, Brazil is a good example, and many of the other
against tourists.
Well, not specifically against tourists, but there certainly are more incidences compared to us. But the difference is that
Mani, come on, look, we're not in Parliament here. Are there more tourists being attacked in Brazil or not? That's my question.
In real numbers, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but certainly in real numbers, yes. But the difference is there are two major things. The point is that their states, what we call provinces, have authority to fix these problems. So immediately the local governor and the local police force and the metro police immediately try and do something about it. But we're hamstrung in that all the competency with police is completely tied up on a national level. It's not been devolved. And so you can do something with some metro police, depending on which municipality you're in, and they can contribute to that problem. The problem is you're hamstrung with the structure, the way the police has been structured in South Africa. And so it really is very difficult. So, if Mpumalanga had more powers, police powers, you could possibly find, because it's localized, it's closer to the ground, you may have found the local MEC would have put something in to deal with this particular incident, and that he can't, as things stand at the moment. So that's an example of how these things are hamstringing and causing problems within tourism.
Yeah. Okay. Again, before Machachi comes in there, it's important that we are clear on this. In South Africa, especially South African politicians like to look good by saying, "But we're not the only ones who face this kind of problem," to run away from the responsibilities. Manu, I know that you're a politician. You said other places that have more incidents than us, and when I pursued you on that one, you only mentioned Brazil. We don't have the figures. I'm going to check them, but it's important that we don't give excuses to politicians in South Africa to get away with not doing what they're supposed to do, because there are not many countries out there that have as many or more incidents against tourism than we have in South Africa. South Africa is bad. It is bad, and we have to acknowledge that it is what it is.
Let me come in here. Many. Let me try and say this. First of all, thank you very much, Solly, and Dan for the invitation, and Tsepo, lovely to meet with you, and of course, Solly's audience out there of WorldView. Greetings to everybody. I think I wanted to just come in here, Manny, to just say that mine is to say it is not about what is happening next door. Not what's happening in Brazil. I'm not worried. I wanted to use a very crude word, but I'm very civil. Yeah, we shouldn't be worried what is going on next door. It's about us as South Africa.
Absolutely.
One crime too many, because we have huge issues in our country, unemployment issues, entrepreneurship issues. We really have serious interest of having to build our economy, empower our people, and give them opportunities. So crime should not be tolerated at any level. It really doesn't matter whether Brazil does it better or not. We just need to get better at handling it in our country. But I think the serious issues that also stands in the way, so as you know, we cannot run away for the history of this country. We need to address the serious issues of this country. South Africans are traumatized people. I'm not giving an excuse, but we have a history of violence as a country. And so somewhere down the line, I don't know whether policy or what is it that's going to fix it. But I think morally, there's the degradation at that level. People are traumatized and the least built on. And so you don't have people who value life, But the other thing is, if we continue with the economic disparities that we have, people don't feel vested in what is happening around them. They look at it as other people's economy. I'm not in this space, I'm not allowed this place, so, this is exclusive and all this kind of stuff. So what do I care? So people don't even see how they're damaging the reputation. I mean, you talk about the NIMBY case, and so 2 weeks ago, I was in Mpumalanga, and we were driving, we had hosted buyers. I did mention this to you, that so we had hosted buyers that we were going to, one of the properties in NIMBY. And we were driving in that area, in the local village there. And when we got to a point where there was a blockade, taxis had blocked the road, and they were not allowing traffic to move. And so when we were driving in the car of one of our buyer. So it had not a South African registration. So I don't want to say from which country, but they looked at, and the guys were looking at us, and we greeted them, and they said, no. There was a marshal who was marshalling us in to direct us away from the main road. So we had to get into the village, navigate our way into the village and get back to the main road. Now, I'm a child of that part of the world, so I was quite comfortable. I've never been in that village, but I was comfortable to go in and say, yeah, guys, let's follow the bus, let's get around, and we find our way back, and we're back on track. Now, this is some of the things that are happening in those areas. So what do we say? So there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. And, we cannot also just say it's a government issue, a policing issue as well. There's a whole lot of solution that we need to bring in. People need to be vested in what is going on in this country. People have to be vested in what's going on in around spaces like the Kruger National Park. They must see themselves benefit beyond jobs and all sorts of stuff. So I don't know what do we do, but it's not a policing matter alone. So it is also about getting people invested in what it is we're doing.
Growing the economy, right?
Yeah, South African we need to be embracive. And we've been talking, I mean, Soli, I'm a member of the Tourism Transformation Council of South Africa. We got to talk about this kind of stuff, of how as South Africans, some days I wake up and I say, I wish I can speak to every South African who has more in their hands and say, can we share? Let's just share, because if we are all vested, we can all work together. But you can't come and say, let me work with you and try and save the economy. And I look at it and I say, hey, as I stand here, I'm not benefiting anything. And so that's a long term we need to put, but there's short term things we need to do. And I agree with what Manny is saying. Short term, what are we doing with the policing? And then what do we do medium term? What then we do in the long term? Funny enough, sorry, when I was there in that road leading to NIMBY Gate, the private owners in that area, the private lodge owners, they invested in a security company. So when the incident with the German attack happened, I was asking myself, what happened to those private security? Because you see them, they're very visible. They work together with the police. I don't know what happened in that, and I was actually very shocked because I was in that area, as I said 2 weeks ago. So, but let me stop for one.
Okay, before I hand over to Seppo, I want to read just 1 or 2 comments. Moonchild says, I'm in tourism, and we've got a lodge near NIMBY Gate and Luli Lodge. And the murder of the German tourists is really having a negative impact on our bookings. I think it's amazing that this German tourist has no name. Nobody has ever said, this is Mr. So-and-so. Why is it that we're taking away the fact that this is a human being who was killed? I think we need to talk about that because it's really important that we move away from, but he's only the third tourist who was killed since 1994, which is also not true. Many people have died, have been hurt, they've been stabbed, they've taken. So I have a friend in Cape Town who runs a restaurant who's had customers being stabbed for stuff to be taken away from them. So we must talk about these things. We can't deal with this matter by spinning. Before I hand over to Seb, I also need to say that we invited the Tourism Business Council, which if you were Chivenga, I have no idea why he keeps ignoring our messages, which is really sad. I hope that one day he'll join us here. He reads them, but he doesn't respond. We've also invited Clinton the Cook of Saki. He has graciously responded and said he really would like to join us. but he can't because he had another interview, another pre-arranged meeting, as it were. Tepo, are you unfrozen?
Yes, I'm back.
Okay.
And these things happen with our network here at home for whatever reason. Today, I won't blame ESCOM. But let's just perhaps reflect on the reality of crime in South Africa and whether, if I was a tourist and if you were a tourist and you wanted to come here, whether you would have the likelihood of saying, yes, I'm going there. If you had a bunch of experts and you're a big corporate and you're invested in South Africa, whether you would comfortably send your employees and your experts to South Africa to represent you. Just earlier this year, it was reported that South Africa records at least 1,000 kidnappings per month at different police stations. In recent months, somebody said the number actually had escalated to at least on average about 3,000 numbers at different, depending on which part of the country you are in. Kidnappings are very, very serious in Gauteng. And then lately we saw the Ukrainian who was kidnapped, like really Hollywood style in our country. Now, when you look at the pattern and the consistency through which these violent crimes happen, I won't go to other violent crimes, just focusing on kidnapping for now, kidnappings and murder for now, and how this impacts the tourism sector or perceptions about South Africa as an excessively violent nation. Would one be willing to send their people here in this country? And importantly, do we come across, and I know that in the long run, there are other strategies that we perhaps need to deploy. And I take your point about, us having to understand where we come from. But here we have a country that violates other people, citizens that violates other people, whether they are foreign or local, every single day in extreme fashions. Is there an integrated strategy that gives us a blueprint about whether the security cluster can proactively say that they have some kind of intelligence about this type of events? Is there at an economic cluster a strategy that says we are aware that tourism is a significant contributor to the economy with above 35% GDP? That's the number I was told, but the experts can tell us. And then, so we need to answer the question perhaps, and maybe tourists who want to come here are asking the question, what's the plan now, given what you know, and given these events that we're talking about, that, and kidnappings it's not just of foreigners, but South Africans, but the level of excessive violence and force that is used doesn't inspire confidence that someone would want to come here. What are your views there? Maybe we start with you, Manny, around the level of violence that we see and the extent to which we are proactively ready to deal with this violence in view of its impact on perceptions and its impact on tourism in our country.
Can I just say that load shedding just happened here, so I'm sorry I'm in the dark. I've got my phone light on here, so I hope you can see me. I just wanted to, Solly, before I answer that question, I think, Solly, you misunderstood me. What I'm saying is that the difference with us and other countries that confront this problem is that they immediately jump on it and they try and resolve the issue. So I'm not minimizing the problem at all. I'm saying is that we're not addressing it fast enough. To answer your question, the reason for the tourist name not being published is because apparently they didn't want their name published and they want some privacy. And I think also we should respect that. But the point is that in countries where they do have these instances, immediately there's something done about it, there are resources put in where necessary and so forth. And that's exactly what I've asked the Minister today, Minister of Police, is what are they doing in the local police station, because that's where the real work happens on the ground, as far as human and other resources are concerned. The second point is, I've got to agree with Mameti. I think we come from a very violent past, very violent history of all South Africans, of all demographics. And we're trying to deal with a normalization And I don't think that we have done it properly. We're trying to, all South Africans are trying to just become normal country, and it's taking longer than expected.
We are in denial of the pain that we all feel, the pain that has accumulated over time.
Yeah. Yes. And I don't think we've dealt with the wounds. We actually haven't confronted it. And as a result, we've got this violent society where we hear about violence all the time and we kind of almost shrug it off. Whereas another society just are shocked. The whole country would be up in arms. We hear about criminal incidences all the time, and we're almost immune to it. And that is a great concern. But my argument was that we need to make sure that that government needs to put in the right measures. And sometimes the way that government is structured is not correct. An example of the German tourist, where if, for example, the MEC had certain policing powers, he could immediately implement certain things immediately at the local police station in White River, and things would start happening. But
so you're talking about more devolving of policing powers at local level?
Everything is centralized in Pretoria, and that is one of the problems. Yeah. So I'm certainly not covering up. I'm certainly not saying it's right.
No, I don't think you are. I don't think you're covering up. Don't worry. If I came up with this.
The impact is shocking. And in Germany, it was huge news. And it's hit us badly. United States Embassy have already put in a warning to their residents. And how many other people,
New Zealand also did the same.
I beg your pardon?
New Zealand also did the same. They issued a warning. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
So
but
just
a great impact on us.
Yeah, joking at that, says South Africa has a history of, for sure, a bloody one at that, but and a big part. What is more important to us now, our history or our future? Good question. James says perhaps no name was given to reinforce what you said because they wanted privacy. And I'm grateful of anyone who is willing to be transparent and appear in public, especially where things are not simple as black and white. Gray areas are usually where the world actually operates. Yeah, look, my professional grounding is brand reputation management, especially destination brand reputation management. South Africa is a destination. Much as she knows that I've worked in tourism before, both in Canada and the USA. So my professional grounding has been protecting and enhancing the image of South Africa, and I've been through that. You know what I'm saying, but I also believe that generally any brand has to be led. You need a leader who is credible, especially destination brands. Mandela was an amazing leader of South Africa. No matter, you can say anything you want about Mandela, he represented this brand really well. And South Africa right now lacks a leader who's able to speak from a moral high ground about what is wrong, what is right, and what we need to do with what is wrong clearly, without favoring this person or that other person. And we lack that. And when there is absence of leadership that sets the tone from the front, we seem to go in all directions because everybody does their own thing. Don't you think that's a problem, that there is not sufficient leadership? And also, we need to be 80% proactive, 20% reactive. We can't wait for trouble to happen and then jump onto the work. South Africa has been accused of being a violent country ever since the early 90s or even before. When I was working in Canada, the first thing people asked me was, dude, you want us to go and get killed in your country? In America, same thing. We don't want to go all the way to your country and come back in body bags. It's still the same thing. What are we putting in place to make sure it doesn't happen, so that we change over time the perception of South Africa being an unsafe place to visit? Much as your view.
I think, so there are no easy answers to the question you're asking. And a lot of it has to do with what we need to do as a nation, over a medium to, a short, medium, and long term. Let me talk about what I think we can do in short term. I think in the short term, the tourism industry itself, with the support of the National Tourism Department, South African Tourism, all the stakeholders, I think we need to activate that tourism safety initiative. I recall that is what we had when I was at the Tourism Business Council, with SATA and everybody on board, and we had I think it was Fidelity Security that came on board. I think at that level to be able to, and I think let me just say, I think when I was at that point, we were dealing with the follow home robberies. Many you remember the follow home robberies
Right.
from the airport into their hotels,
Mhm.
and they were very effective in that space. So I'm saying at the medium, at the immediate, I think private sector need to pull together. Just like the example I was giving you, that in that road leading to Numbigate, there is private security that I saw. I'm not saying somebody told me, I saw those people. They're actually driving up and down that road leading to Numbigate.
Were they before it happened, or this whole thing happened, or after?
No, that's before. I was there, as I said to you, so I was there 2 weeks. I was there in the end of September, the weekend of the 24th, 25th of September. I was in Nelspruit. We had an event. And when we finished, we went out into some of the private game lodges with some of the buyers there. So in that week, that's when we traveled into Nimbi. And I saw the private security. I just don't remember their name. But the guys were literally driving that long stretch, once you get out of the village, and you're now on the long stretch going to Nimbi Gate. There is patrol vehicles that are going up and down. And so when we asked the owner of the place that we visited, he actually told us more that was a partnership that they had with the Kruger National Park and and the private game lodges that are in that space. So I'm thinking in the short term, those kind of initiatives need to emerge. I know it's expensive, but I'm thinking that in the short term we can do something like that. But I think in the medium term, we then and of course the reactivating. I don't know where the tourism safety initiative is, because I think the entire tourism industry in South Africa need to get onto it. Because one of some of the measures that they had there was that there were things like what measures must you do when you get attacked if you end up in an accident. The panic buttons that you need to play, the numbers you need to dial, the embassy contacts and stuff like that. So that was the whole system that we were trying to build when I was still at the TBC to get that going. So at least that when something happens to you, you get marked or something, you now know who to call. And this they were going to be able to get when they arrive at any airport, whether it's Cape Town Airport or Johannesburg International Airport. They were going to be given this a kind of device so that they know that welcome to South Africa. This is crime happens everywhere. We don't put it negatively, but we say crime happens everywhere else. Here's a measure that in case something happens to you, this is what you did. So I don't know where that initiative is. So I think we need to reactivate that in the short term.
Yeah, let's talk about the question Tebo asked earlier about the possible impact of all these kidnappings that seem to be growing in South Africa.
Look, I think the impact is huge. And I think this is the thing. What when you go back, you look at the pattern of this kind of crimes. I mean, when you look at South Africans themselves, which is a point you made, South Africans themselves are subjected to crime. Let alone our visitors. You look at what is happening in the Gauteng area with the Zamazamas, the whole cases in the West Rand. It's almost like coordinated kind of destabilization, if you like. If you're a conspirator, you kind of can think that there's some magic hands behind the scenes trying to destabilize the country. Because if it's this, then there is the Zamazamas who are doing this. If it's not, South Africa, we kidnappings are quite strange. But there's a lot of them going in at the moment. And what is driving all this? So, and I think one of the realities of where we find with the huge crime levels that we have, you also have people opportunistic, because they almost like see a lawless country where anyone can do whatever they want to do. So some of these things may not necessarily localize, but some opportunistic that has taken place. And the question is, it's not going to help us, as you indicated, to talk about this issue. What are we going to do about it?
Yeah. Manuel, do you have a relationship? I mean, you're a shadow minister of MEC or Minister of Tourism in Gauteng. Do you have a relationship with the MEC for tourism? Do you guys have coffee and exchange views, even if we differ and you come from different political points, so that we can tackle these issues together?
I'm actually in Parliament, in the National Parliament. So,
Okay.
and I'm the shadow tourism minister there.
Okay.
Yes, we and when we talk on committee and when we talk one-to-one with the minister, we pretty much agree on most of the problems. But the problem is with tourism is that it's reliant on other departments to be able to do certain functions so they can perform tourism. So, for example, in reality, this German tourist incident, the kidnapping incident, is actually a police matter. If you're talking about, you were talking about, Mametti was talking earlier about Mpumalanga, and she can tell you much more experience than I'm sure, is that we've got such beautiful culture. In Mpumalanga, as an example, where German tourists would love to go into a village to watch the local culture, talk about the local folklore and so forth, but they can't physically get to the village because there's no road constructed. that's transport. And so it goes on and on and on. And there isn't a coordination. And Solly, you're right, there isn't this unifying figure that we had in Mandela, that it was able to unify the nation, and even with our hurts, even with our past and our brokenness, he was able to lead this light ahead of us. And so we do lack that leader. We do lack it because we're divided more than ever. There's no one person everybody's standing behind. And I don't have the answer for that. My answer is each one of us in our own little way must contribute to what we can in building this country. And that is what everyone on this panel is doing. Even you, Solly, this program is contributing to debating, to thinking, to allowing us to come together. And so, there's no short answer. I'm going back to the fact that the structure, the way that things are not correct. And we need to make sure there's a lot more devolution and that there's a lot more coordination between all of us. And also, the reality is we do need to get the private sector more involved. The government cannot do everything on its own. And that is part of the whole thing. But we do talk. I mean, the minister and I talk all the time. And I mean, these are not political, ideological issues. These are issues that all of us agree on. But the reality is, the reason why you mentioned Zamas earlier, the reason why there are kidnappings is all economic. And until we concentrate on building our economy, and out of that will automatically create jobs, and people's lot is improved, then people won't want to go into crime because they are making their lives a success through proper means. And our economy isn't growing fast enough. We're not doing we're not making the right economic actions and decisions. And as a result, there are more and more people impoverished. And so that's got to be a priority, because when that happens, there's a cascading effect where then, all these things come into play. And then tourism will come in because the country will be safer, it'll become more attractive, and more jobs will be created. So it just spins on and on and on. So short of having a wonderful leader like Mandela, a Mandela-type leader, each of us have got to do our little part and the best we can. And sometimes we've got to speak up, even say things that are unpopular. And as much as Minister Tlale hates the fact that we are saying you've got to devolve some police powers, we've got to keep saying it. Yeah. Just like we spoke up against the handbook with all these, Solly, before we started the show, with all these extra perks that these ministers are getting. It's a shame. It's an embarrassment, because here on the ground, I am in my load-shedded room with my phone light shining on here. It's ridiculous. Yeah. Sorry, I'm going on a bit, but that's what I have about tourism, because tourism is an easy win. And Mametsi would know much better than me. It's an easy win. We just do the basics, and these people flock in. Our tourism product is not the problem. It's our government and how things are run.
Simple.
Yeah, it sounds like we are painting a very dark picture, but unfortunately, it is very dark. And what is more frightening is the fact that the leaders accountable for these portfolios are not speaking when they are invited to do so, when they're asked to engage. I mean, the Americans waited a bit, but they eventually issued a travel warning for the area in Mpumalanga. And that should be worrying for us as a sector, as citizens, as leaders in the sector. But it doesn't seem like there's a sufficient political leadership. Someone said, I think, quoted the Minister of Tourism as saying that tourists will now be welcomed with a video about safety and security when they land in South Africa. That's not my words. It's a story published in one of the media platforms. Do we have I'm going back to strategy. Is there a sense that you get that there is some kind of a tangible strategy? And if you think one doesn't exist, what would be your own recommendations, given the limited time that we have to have this conversation, so that we talk openly about the extreme levels of scary violence that we see, but also come up with some solutions for the tourism sector? And perhaps any of you can take the specific one.
Tsapo, I thank you for that. I think, one of the things we get accused of as South Africans, and it's actually true, we like to strategize a lot. Strategies and this and this and that, and we don't implement. So I think for me, there's enough strategies. I mean, solely we go back to the tourism white paper of 1997 or something like that. With all these things are there. So I think the strategies are there, Tsepo, to answer your question quickly. It's the implementation that we need to get to. And for me, I still go back to exactly what I said. I think it's long term. We know we need to address the economic issues of unemployment, joblessness, the trauma, and all those kinds. That's a long term thing, and medium to long term. But immediately, it's a chicken and egg situation. You gotta make sure that you make your destination to be likable. People must want to come to our country. I mean, we are connected. I just looked at how many airlines are flying in. I celebrated the other day that Delta flies via Joburg into Cape Town. And when I was in Cape Town in early September, lots of people arriving in the airport. I was just so ecstatic. I was so excited. And I was checking out the numbers to see what was happening with tourist numbers in the different facilities. Exciting. When I was in the Lowveld, I promise you, I was in Woodspruit at Eastgate Airport. It was chock-a-block. Those private game people are coming into our country. So I think, one of the things we also, and it is in the tourism white paper, awareness of the benefits of tourism. Mm-hmm. We need to spread the message. I don't know we need to speak to SABC. Maybe, we must run a show where we get different people to come and talk about tourism and its benefits, because a lot of people are not connecting the dots. And a classic example of how tourism works is when we were hit with COVID, suddenly everything went. People thought it was tourism alone. The agricultural sector was down on its knees as well, because tourism has got the longest value chain. And therefore, when tourists are coming in, everybody benefits. And so we need to get the message to our people. So the rural woman, the young person growing up, they need to understand that I may not necessarily have studied tourism, but if I've got an accounting degree, I have a career in tourism. But this is how tourism adds to the economic benefits of our country. So I always talk about tourism being the oxygen in the body that is called the economy of South Africa. We need to get that message across, because if people begin to understand that says, if I'm attracting this tourist, what is the ripple effect of the Numbi Gate, which is a case we deal with? The kidnapping in Cape Town. If we do that, people will not want to choose to come to Cape Town anymore. So we need to get that. I think for me, that's getting those basics right. And then, of course, the next other thing for me is the private sector is many say. Private sector, let's get in here. South African private sector has got money. Let's get in here. Let's put the muscle, but in a partnership solely. We don't want to do things that cross. Let private sector get together. Somebody was talking about last night. There was a story about the what do they call the social compact? Example, if you have the president has been talking about the social compact, with business and government. One of those content of the social compact for me is about dealing with tourism and security in our country. So private sector bring in the muscle, bring in the money to be able to make sure we bring the private security firms in this space, so we protect our people, we protect our tourists, and then we protect the destination, and then we work on the long term going forward. So that would be my contribution at this stage. So I'll give
Money.
What I said to you
before money goes, I just wanted to check: Are you suggesting that the citizens must now pay, or business must pay double levy? So you pay taxation so that you can have an infrastructure of a security cluster that must protect all citizens. Now you must actually add a security levy and a security fee to private entities, and we bulk up this thing and it becomes a very, very fat. Is that where we are?
No. I'm talking partnerships, Tabo. Not everything is in life it costs money. Private sector has got the knowledge, has got the infrastructure, to be able to make sure that some of these measures come into play. I just mentioned the tourism safety initiative. Private sector bringing in that knowledge. The company like Fidelity, I'm making that as an example. They've got all these facilities in place, to be able to help us monitor, help us with this facility where tourists can be given some of these things that if something happens to them, they can quickly log up to the nearest police or nearest their embassy and things like that. So I'm talking partnerships, because we can never achieve things when we actually say exclusively government has to do that. We all know the limitation of government. And it's not because they don't want to. Governments all over the world, they have a limitation in terms of what they can do and what they cannot do. Private sector has got the nimbleness, the flexibility to be able to get things going. They don't have PFMA to deal with. So this partnership of one who's flexible, one who's not flexible, bringing it together, we can achieve a lot more, and that's what I'm talking about.
Do you think government trusts the private sector ceremony sufficiently? Do they? Because I've had complaints, especially during 2020 COVID restrictions, that there were lots of frustrations on the part of the private sector that government was not listening to them. I mean, can we get to a point where governments realize that much of the skill, the experience, perhaps even the resources lie in the established private sector, and they need to work with them and leave their egos and political egos behind?
Sorry, I don't think. Sorry, Manny, maybe let me comment before Manny come in.
Sure.
I used to represent the TBCSA at BUSA, Business Unity.
Right.
And I'll all collaborate with the Black Business Council, speaking with all these collectives. I don't think it's an issue of trust. One of the things I may be going off at Olympia. One of the problems we have as South Africans is egos.
Mm.
We need to we need to learn to put our egos aside.
Right.
We also need to learn to be able to say when we were in charge, this was working. We need to leave that aside. We are trying to build a new nation here. Mm-hmm. And building a new nation means taking every little bit from everybody. And so for me, I don't think there's an issue of trust in the word trust that you and I understand it to be. There's an issue of egos across the table when business and government comes together. And I think those things, our leaders need to put those down and be able to sit down and say, in the name of country, this is what we need to be able to do. And then let it happen. And then we can go back into our corners where we can start throwing the egos out to make us big or important.
Manny?
I think it's more than the egos. I think the reality is the ANC is ideologically straitjacketed. They still have very old style ideology thinking and are very nervous about including private sector. And it's taking a lot longer than what it should. So I'm not going to repeat what Methu was saying because I agree with 100%, but I do think they are ideologically trapped and are very nervous and suspicious of the private sector because they're just not allowing it to happen. And we don't have to be afraid. As an example, for example, the rail tourism industry in the country's collapsed. Now, the government can still own all the infrastructure, but allow the private sector to upgrade the infrastructure, allow it to actually run the thing while government still owns it. So there can be that partnership that Mehmet is talking about. It's exactly right.
Is the blue train still running? Rovers Rail, are they still around?
Those things are running precisely because they're privately run. But the point is I certainly can't afford to go on the blue train. But I would love to go on just the train that everyone else can afford to, travel an hour or two somewhere.
There was the Utenika Choo Choo, which was amazing. It's
still there. That's still there. So those smaller, we should have it much bigger. And the reality is government is not able to do it all on its own. And we do need these partnerships. And government needs to get out of this ideological straitjacketing that I keep talking about.
Right. Okay. So I have a few comments there. If you want a great country for mafia startups, South Africa is the place to be. Mafias from all over the globe are here. The truth is that there's a level of truth in there. A friend of mine took me to Cape Town and said, "Here, these are the Israelis. This is the Russians. It's scary." And in central Cape Town, you can't just come in and start a camp here. Somebody else has to offer security, and whoever controls security controls who sells the drugs in the club. So we have a country that is being parceled out in front of our eyes.
That's happening. That is happening because the basics isn't being done. Police isn't policing. They're not investigating. They're not ensuring there's intelligence. If drugs are coming into the country, how is it coming in? What are we doing about it? It's all stuff that a basic government should be doing. And so because they're not doing it, these things flourish. And so, the black market comes in and they do their thing. It goes back to governments.
Yeah, look.
Go ahead. I just wanted to mention earlier, because the question you asked is what can be done right now? And I've suggested to the minister is that, as I said earlier, most of what needs to be done in tourism isn't within the tourism ministry.
Yeah.
It's someone else. And so I suggest there should be a tourism or some kind of coordinating war room where all the departments are in. And, again, sorry to bring up but it's the one that just happened, the German tourist incident. You can immediately, in that war room, talk to police, talk to, you talk about local security companies, you're talking about the access to the road, the sand parks and so forth, and coordinate the whole thing. So what could be done is, I would think, relatively easy, because those officials are there already. You don't actually have a physical war room. It can all be electronic, but everybody's talking to each other, and it can happen. So those are little things that should be done that can contribute in the long term. Yeah.
Look, I don't like refer to past presidents, especially the ones that are criticizing for this and that. But Mbeki said something in an interview about 2 years ago, which I think was very good. He said that the current government under Ramaphosa seems to be working in silos. So every minister is doing their own thing. And precisely what you're saying, Manu, they're not coordinating. They're not saying, okay, I'm running tourism. In order to have an effective tourism sector, which other department play a role? So it seems like there's this absence of horizontal alignment of activity, of plans and stuff. Machachi, what do you say to that?
No, sorry. I just want to add to what you're saying, but take a little bit higher.
Okay.
Earlier on, I talked about tourism awareness to the general populace. The children at school levels understanding the story of tourism.
Right.
But for me, to add to what Manny is saying, I think there is no understanding of the value of tourism. For me, it's not unique to South Africa. You look at it in the entire Africa. For me, some years back, I attended I used to actively take part in the World Travel and Tourism Council meeting. I recall a meeting in Dallas. They had their general meeting in Dallas, and they had the U.S. Secretary of Commerce. That was still under Obama administration. And she came to address the meeting in Dallas. This is when it struck me to say the U.S. understands tourism like no other. This woman stood up there and she said, we don't have a Ministry of Tourism. We have a Ministry of Commerce. But let me tell you what. We understand how tourism contributes to the economy of the U.S. Take the state of New York. We understand why we need to have so many hotels. We need to understand why we need to do also something with the visas, because it's all coordinated.
Right.
And so for me, this woman stood up and told these people, said, we get you. And yes, we won't create this brand USA just for a destination visibility point of view, but we are behind Hollywood. Hollywood is the biggest marketer for our country. And so I bring it back to what Manny was saying. I think in our government, one is hoping that at some point our president and cabinet will actually elevate tourism. I don't need to be a super ministry, just like Treasury, where every other ministry has a mandate to deliver to tourism.
But you also have to have the right personalities in those roles. I mean, you have a boring minister who doesn't even know what they're talking about, who reads a speech from A to Z without looking up, and they still don't understand what they've just read. That's not sufficient to excite people, really, is it?
Yeah, I think Machachi raises important points about these ideals that we want, the super ministry. But at a grassroots and very, very tangible level, we don't seem to, as I'm thinking right now, at the back of my mind, I'm thinking there's intelligence in the police, or there's supposed to be intelligence in the police, and then there's supposed to be intelligence in the state overall, which helps us to understand patterns and systems of crime, and help us to think creatively about how to solve problems, because we can't just be sending the police left, right, and center in a reactionary pattern in the same way that we did in July 2021. We need some kind of coordination, and I wonder whether at a practical level, whether there's intelligence that exists, and whether there are conversations behind the scenes about intelligence, so that we can anticipate why do we have all of a sudden, as you've said, 1,000 kidnappings a month or more, and why do we have patterns of this illegal mining and the violence and the level of violence that's happening? Why do we have so many cars being hijacked every single day across our country? And why do so many people die? And so the intelligence for me seems to be a big black hole.
Yeah, look, it's very look, guys. We can spend and this is what we do in Africa. We do quite well. We go into conferences, discussions. We say all the lovely things, but usually the people who make policy, who control the resources, are not here. So then we go home. We feel, yeah, we had a great conversation. We know the answers to the issues facing us. But sure, at some point, I personally don't see South Africa recovering while the ANC is in power, because they've been in power for 28 years almost, and it was 28, it's going to be 30 years soon. And once people have been in power for too many years, they get to a point where they get things for free. They don't care, you can blah 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 all the time. They listen, they pretend to be listening, they move on. So we have politicians in South Africa who are feared by citizens instead of the other way around. So politicians have to fear the citizens. They have to know that the citizens will make a decision that kicks you out of your job and your comfies the next day or the next election rather. We don't have that. So should we wait for 2024 to happen and hope that South Africa will have a better leadership at national level to respond to all of these things, these recommendations from the sectors, from the professionals like you, Machaji, the freighters? Or what do we do? I mean, do we keep talking until hopefully somebody listens?
So if I can ever go at it, I'm not a politician. And
but politics impacts what you do. I know you don't want to talk about it. It impacts what you do.
No, very much. I'm with you. So when I say I'm not a politician, I'm saying in terms of say this party or this party and this party.
Right.
I will talk as an ordinary citizen. So I think it's for many to be able to speak about politics and you as a host. From that point, everything is about politics. We know that politics affects all our life. So I'm not saying I'm not in politics. I'm not a politician. I'm not a politician. So for me, I think this let's hope and pray story doesn't work. I think for me, it's got to be us as society need to do a little bit where we are.
Okay.
A little bit in terms of in our homes. We know that crime. It's only that criminal who did whatever.
We harbor them. them.
So what are we doing about that? I know my son or my sister is doing whatever. What am I doing about it? So there is that we also need to deal with it. Society. That's because
there are no consequences. We live in a country where there are no consequences for bad people.
People live off the process of crime. So what do we say about that? So we like to externalize. It's all about the government. It's all about government are people like you and I. When the minister comes out of the home, the office, they go home. There is somebody's mother, somebody's father somewhere.
No. They got blue lights and bodyguards, please. They're not like us.
At an individual level, I'm saying, forget about strip them of their titles. I'm trying to elevate the issue of community. To say community need to be able to. We know the criminal who did the raping, who did that thing. The people there in Numbi, they know who did that crime. Why did they allow it? We have to also go through that story, and we're able to heal ourselves. I'm bringing the spiritual and heal ourselves.
Okay.
It starts. The second level for me, I go to business as well, because this crime level is bad for business. At the level of business people, without having to fork out extra more money, what can we do to bring the partnership in it? There's something beautiful, Soli, about when you are smart. I've always believed this, that if Soli and Soli is the smart one, and Soli knows that he's smarter than me. You don't lose anything to come and grovel at my feet to get me to do the right thing. You don't lose any. You're smarter. When you finish getting me to do what you've always wanted me to do, but in a way that makes me feel nice and good, and you get back to your space, you look at me and say, look at that fool. She's doing what I wanted her to do anyway. So who's smarter? Business.
I'm confused.
No.
I don't know what to answer, but yeah, I get you.
I'm thinking philosophy of, sorry, one of the problems with us in the world is all about I want to be on top.
You're right. You're absolutely correct. Yeah. Egos. We started this discussion by talking about egos.
Sometimes to win the fight, you don't have to be a smart one. You must influence others. You smarter. Influence them to do what you want them to do. Because in the end, you can sit back and say, look at them. They're doing what I want to do. You keep it and smile in your corner. Cool. You're happy. The country is moving forward. That's what it's all. The goal, we must learn to focus on the goal. What is it that we want to fix the country? So if it means the clever people are going to grovel at the feet of the not so clever people, let's get the job done because we're focusing on the goal. And that's what for me when I say business, who knows how to run business, who are making money day in and day out, they know how to do this stuff. And they're smart enough to be able to go and, go influence those who don't know how to do, but they think they know what to do. For me, I think that's what we as a country need to do. Join hands in partnership. That's how we're going to fix this country. No one is going to fix it. Some of us cannot pack. We don't have 2 passports to go and live wherever. This is the only home we know, and we're going to fix it, and we must roll our sleeves. And then the government must also, sometimes when the government will also figure it out. I don't know, politicians, many, it's your job there, opposition parties, you must do what you have to do so that together, it's going to take a whole collective of all of us doing a little bit to move us along to the future. We're bumping in the right direction.
We have a few minutes to finish, but I must just add this one. There are many people who have 2 passports who live in South Africa, who love to live in South Africa, who don't leave. I think we need to stop the perception that people who have 2 passports don't or have half loves for South Africa. It's not true, because that's a perception that gets pushed out there. There are many people who really love South Africa. So having 2 passports has nothing to do whether one loves South Africa or his community. There are people with choice who are staying in South Africa. It's important not to push that perception.
No, let me correct you. Totally, I was not creating that impression. I wanted to say when you have 2 passports, as an example, at least you have an option. So I'm saying there are people who don't have any other option. So it was a figurative speech, but it doesn't mean that if 2 passports we can always get out. No, there are people who actually choose to live here. They've actually denounced their own citizenship. They want to live here and they want to make things work. And we need to join forces and make it work.
Okay, we have about 2-3 minutes. Tepo and the Freitas, Manu, can I
just wanted to say that it goes. I'm not going to repeat what Mamet is saying, because I think her and I are on the same wavelength. What I'm saying is that each of us as South Africans have our own responsibility to do what we need to do to build this country. We must stop relying on government. Government needs to do its thing, and you're quite right. People like me must go and fight with them to get it done. But the normal man and woman on the street, the person on the street, what are they doing individually? People are saying, I can't, I can't do X, Y, Z because it's too high level for me. Well, what are they doing in their local community? What are they doing to make their community safer? And hence, if their community is safer, the chance of tourists, for example, coming to your community to visit the local shops, to do the local tourism and so forth, will be a lot greater. So what are we doing individually? How are we making my own street safer? How am I, if I see litter on the floor, I'm actually one of those weird people. I actually pick up rubbish from the floor that's not even mine, and it doesn't cost you anything to throw it in a dustbin. Little things like that. It's mindset about changing. It's not just government.
Absolutely. Tepo, do you have parting shots?
Parting shots. I think Biggie Mark Meir. That's what many is saying. But I think as a sector, probably the tourism sector needs to have far more coordinated discussions, proactive with all the other sectors, because if your value chain is this long, and the problems that you're experiencing in the sector are actually issues raised by other different sectors and instruments of the state, or in control of those instruments, maybe it's better if you actually lead the pack and become that super ministry without being appointed to do so, and just lead discussions around intelligence, around healthcare, around protecting, about transport, so that people are able to move around and do so freely, and importantly, discussions about safety and security. It's a serious one that's worrying. As we live in this dark, load-shedded environment, you don't want more and more violence to continue without us talking about it, in view of saying, well, we have a Minister of Police that's accountable. In this context, we don't seem to have any accountability. And something needs to happen, and needs to happen quickly.
Yeah, what you're saying, Live in Wisdom said earlier, I'm tired of hearing about Mandela. We don't need any more symbolism, guys. We need pragmatism. Switch from a virtue signaling / activism national culture to a pragmatic one. I think it's pretty much what you, Machachi, and Manu have been saying, that we need to take the responsibility upon ourselves to play our part. Each one of us has a role to play. It doesn't mean that we stop saying to government, you need to do it, because we're still paying taxes to this government. It must do what it must. If not, hopefully one day it'll be kicked out. But we can't wait for them to act. We have to play the part. We have to bring those people in who commit crime, who make it hard for us, who don't understand that the little crime that happens in Nombi Gate impacts the country entirely. It stops many people who might have been considering a visit to South Africa to postpone that visit to never make it. Because we must remember this, no matter how beautiful South Africa is awesome, I've had the opportunity to visit South Africa because I work in tourism. Nobody who comes to South Africa and has a good time doesn't want to return to South Africa. Many people have even decided to stay in South Africa, not to go back to their country or to go and come back. I know even diplomats, representatives of foreign companies who came there for 3 years and then said, I'm not going back. They stayed in South Africa. But there are many, many, many more people who are not coming because they don't want to come there to be killed. And those people could contribute a lot more, and that lot more could help grow the tourism and grow the economy, put food on many more tables around the country. Small guys who support the tourism industry who are invisible. Transport, catering, cooking, cleaning, all those services are part of the broader value chain of the tourism industry that people take for granted. I think we really need to work hard. Guys, this is the only South Africa we have. We have to work so much harder to make it the most amazing country, to make it the #1 destination in Africa. Currently, it's number 3 in terms of the figures. We have everything that it takes to even go into the top 20 world destinations for tourism, but we're not there yet. It depends on all of us. Machachi, the freighters, Manu, the freighters, thank you so very much. Seppo, my colleague, my friend of many years. I really, people just love you here. You mentioned Seppo. It's good. We should keep doing this. Thank you, guys. Have a nice evening. We'll do it again another time.
Thank you so